Good afternoon, everyone. This is Puneet Modgill, and on behalf of Microsoft, let me welcome you to our monthly Voice of the CIO Webcast. This is the series that we run every month, where we feature an invited CIO speaker, and the CIO shares his or her perspective on usage of a technology in his business. This is why we run every month. We record it. This is a live broadcast. So we also record it and share a URL with you later on that you can share with your other colleagues. So this is primarily meant for CIO and technology leaders in Indian companies, Indian businesses. And the series today is, of course, featuring Mr. Mulki, who's the CIO for Pidilite Industries. And the topic today is executive dashboards, staying in the driver's seat. So some logistics. You can ask a question during the session. The next half an hour is when Mr. Mulki will present his perspective. He'll share his ideas, share his experiences with you. And during this webcast, you can pop a question. If you see the live meeting the box, you'll see a Q&A option. You can type your question during the webcast, and we'll queue up all the questions and post Mr. Mulki sharing his presentation and ideas. We'll open it up to your questions, and we'll answer them in the sequence we receive them. Just to let you know that also next month, 26th of July, Tuesday, we have confirmed our next webcast, again meant for CIO and technology leaders in India, and we'll feature WNS CFO, Mr. Alok Mishra, who will share with us on how to use technology for SEC filings. This is the stock and financial information. How can you use technology for filing your financial data on time? So with that, let me welcome you again, all of you, to our webcast for the month. And let me invite Mr. Rakesh Sinha, who's the Director for Industry Solutions at Microsoft India, to take this forward from here. Over to you, Rakesh.
Thank you, Puneet. And good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to this webcast. And it gives me a great pleasure to welcome Mr. Mulki, the CIO Pidilite Industries, to Microsoft for this webcast. Thank you very much, sir. Mr. Mulki comes with 20+ years of experience and is currently the CIO of Pidilite Industries. He is responsible for all IT planning, strategic implementation, and support as an integral part of the business plan. He provides the thought leadership as far as IT is concerned to his industry and the entire group of industries. Before Pidilite, he was working for the Godrej Industries, and he was the Executive Vice President for the Corporate Information Systems. He was also responsible for the entire group as such, as far as strategy was concerned. He has also played an advisory role for all the Godrej Group companies and was primarily responsible for all strategic IT investments and initiatives in his group. So I welcome Mr. Mulki again and hand it over to him. As Puneet has said, you can post your questions and we'll answer them once the session is over.
Good afternoon, friends. I'm Mulki here, and we are here to discuss a subject which, in my mind, would be the single most important platform for taking business decisions in the very near foreseeable futures. And it's very important that we gear up and meet the management expectations on this very important product. While before we jump into the main slides of the presentation, I must say that at the end of the day, when a successful dashboard product is delivered, it's one of the most simple products to use. And effective dashboards deliver something which is the most simplistic product to use. But if you have to deliver that simplistic nature in the product delivery, there's a huge amount of work at the back end which one must do. And that's the complicated part. Building a dashboard is very, very difficult. It's not easy because there are a lot of non-technology issues which we need to grapple. But using a dashboard is something which is very easy. A couple of points which I would like to say before I begin my presentation. One is while we have implemented some amount of dashboards at Pidilite, but we have still taken baby steps. It's not that we have gained a mastery, and I'm very pleased to share with you all some of the learnings which I have on this initial journey of this product which we have started. I must also make a couple of announcements. One is I'm suffering from a very bad throat and intermittent cough. So in between, if you hear a pause, please don't assume I have disappeared. I've just gone to gulp a glass of hot water. I would also be assisted during my presentation by Sanjay Mehta, who is the CEO of Maya Intelligence, the partner who helped us develop these dashboards at Pidilite. Welcome, Sanjay.
Hi everybody. Thanks, Mani.
Yeah. Now, before a little bit about Pidilite, I'm sure all of you would have heard about the organization, and the product which instantly comes to the mind is Fevicol. And when I share the name Pidilite, probably the only product which comes to the mind is Fevicol. But the organization is much more beyond Fevicol. Fevicol is of course our flagship product, but it's a complex maze of different line of businesses. Right from it has entire range of businesses, right from your B2C, for example, your art stationery and art stationery and fabric care, and we also have industrial adhesives, we have construction chemicals, we have paint chemicals. So there's a range of products which where the target customers would be big industries as well as end consumers like you and me, and there are different divisions which operate on a common support platform, which is how the whole organization operates. So it's a very complex matrix organization, and building a dashboard for such an organization is bound to be quite challenging. At the end of the day, a dashboard is nothing but it's a visual tool. The single most important, to draw an analogy of the automobile industry, where you have speedometer, you have the temperature gauge, where at an instance you come to know how a particular aspect of a business operation is performing. So it's very important that when you deliver a dashboard, it should be very simple to understand, and it should at an instant exactly say this is how a particular aspect of your business operation is performing. So it's unlike a transaction system, where you go through a maze of reports before coming to a conclusion as to how you're performing. A dashboard should instantly say that this is how good a business operation would perform. So in other words, a dashboard is nothing but which takes a huge amount of your digitized data and converts it into a graphical interface. Now, a key here is the simplicity of the graph and the sophistication of the graph. And it's very important to draw a thin line, between these two things. When one implements a dashboard, the technology allows you to draw up, various types of sophisticated graphs and advanced type of, visual interfaces. But one must bear in mind that the person who's going to see it is going to be a business decision maker, and it's very important to realize that when he sees this, he should immediately interpret it in the most simplistic of manner. So so the key to any dashboard is to take the huge amount of numerical data which would be there in your transaction systems and translate that into meaningful graphs. Most important aspect of dashboard, which can be done at a later stage when you have crossed a certain barrier, is to have graphs which are role-based. For example, when you have a dashboard for a national sales manager, he would see all India sales. And the same dashboard, the same interface is extended to a regional manager. He should see sales pertaining to his own region. So a dashboard should be configured and built in such a manner that it should be precisely role-based. Not only that, based on different functions, a dashboard could have different meanings based on the metrics, the business metrics which it is reflecting. So some of the characteristics of a dashboard project, which is a little different from let's say implementing a transaction-based system, is first and foremost the users, the early users of any dashboard are the business people, the top management, the decision makers. And it's very, very important to involve them at the very early stage, right from designing the dashboard into and translating them into graphical interfaces. Now, this is easier said and done because when you converse with them, they are quite happy with the way they are taking decisions, and invariably it will be through myriad reports generated from SAP or any other ERP reports, and it would be either be through collation of information from different sources, and they are quite happy with that. I mean, the first question when you approach them for a dashboard project would be, why should I change the way I take decisions? So it's very important to involve them. And quite frankly, there is no textbook which says this is the process you should follow for their involvement. It by and large, depends on, the relations you have with your business head, with the top management. And this is a crucial aspect. When we develop a dashboard, if we miss this aspect out, we'll be developing a dashboard which is fantastic to look at, which is very colorful, but at the end of the day, it is ineffective and dies its natural death. Another aspect is once you have crossed this barrier of a dashboard is the scope. When finally you have crossed the barrier where the business head is ready to participate in the development of the dashboard, it comes to the scope. Unlike, again, I'm drawing parallel to a transaction system, where, it's very easy to clearly define the limits of the scope that, yes, these are some of the modules which you will cover. In a dashboard, it's next to impossible to lay down the parameters and the perimeters of the scope. So one has to bear in mind that the dashboard is something which is very visual, and a person using it understands it after he actually sees the product. And that's when, his gray matter gets triggered, and he comes out with, so many different aspects of how a dashboard should be used. So one should bear in mind that it's next to impossible to define a scope right at the beginning. We should engage with the top management users and build the scope as we develop it, and leave room. It should be flexible enough such that we could add more features as the people start using it. One of the reasons also why a dashboard fails is data hygiene. At the end of the day, it's a reflection of your numerical data, and quite often this aspect is missed out. If you really ask me, developing a dashboard, technically speaking, it doesn't take time. What takes time is to feed the dashboard and the graph with clean data. When I say clean data, I do not only mean the sanctity of the data, I also mean the interpretation of data. For example, let's say a dashboard reflects sales figures. Now, when you look at sales with a target, some businesses may be viewing it as net of sales, some people may be viewing it as gross of sales. So it's also the interpretation of data which is very important. Second most important thing is to have master data which is very clean. You should not have item master, customer master which gets duplicated. And at the end of the day, a single graphical interface summarizes all the transaction data which is there. So it is very important to have clean and crisp data before a dashboard is delivered. So this aspect is something which one should focus on and have a parallel activity when you start the dashboard project. Most important, when a dashboard gets used, let's say a top management user, decision maker is comfortable using the dashboard, where when he sees it, he will have so many questions. And let's see, when he sees a dashboard which has sales exceptions, as we have done at Pidilite, he will want to go down from a national level to a regional level to a cluster level to a territory level. So when one designs the dashboard, it's very important to bear in mind that drill-down features should be a part of the whole dashboard design. And most important is, as I mentioned, I keep repeating this, is the information which is displayed should be very simple, such that it should translate into an action. We should never display any information on the dashboard, which doesn't translate into an action. It should not be information for information's sake. It should be actionable. Based on what one sees on a dashboard, on a graphical interface, a person should take some action. For example, let's say if there's an accounts receivable dashboard and he sees that a particular territory it has gone down, it should translate into an action. So that one should bear in mind. And these are some of the characteristics of a dashboard which one should. So quite simply, I mean, it's the objective of any dashboard would be to first and foremost to take the guesswork out. It's an accurate reflection of your business reality. Most important, it dramatically improves and the time a business manager takes for decisions and also the quality of decision making. So at the end of the day, a dashboard doesn't achieve these objectives, then it's not effective. So now, once we have tried to get a handle on what a dashboard is and what are the characteristics of a dashboard, how do you go about building it? As I mentioned before, a most important aspect of a dashboard building is the engagement of the top management, because those are the people who are going to use it. You cannot have a dashboard for operational people and announce that it's a success. These initial people, set of people who are using a dashboard should be the top management. And these are the people who are very difficult to get time from. These are the people who are very much immersed in their day-to-day work, and they would not be so ready to share the way they take decisions. So it's very important to work with them, to engage with them, and understand how they take decisions, to understand on which data they depend on to take decisions, to understand which are the people they interact with, which are the sources they interact with, what are the problems they face while taking decisions. So these are all very important inputs to help build your dashboard design. And you just cannot build a successful dashboard without crossing this step. Most important, after you have presumably engaged with the top management, and here my advice is, there would be, like in Pidilite we have so many divisions. Similarly in other businesses there would be so many divisions, there would be so many top management users who would be taking business decisions. It helps to target a business user who is very approachable and who is ready to participate in that. So with that, what you can achieve is demonstrate early success. And once you demonstrate early success, other divisions or other functions would easily catch on. Before you start building a dashboard project, what's important is to arrive at key performance metrics. In fact, this is the single most important early steps which you will take while building a dashboard design. At the end of the day, a dashboard should reflect and only reflect the performance of a business metric. If you are not able to define this business metric and it just displays information which is just for information's sake and which is a reflection of what he sees in reports, then a dashboard is just another means of a reporting facility. A dashboard, one should bear in mind, not only helps, it urges him to take business decisions and actionable plans. And that can only come about if it reflects business metrics. And as I mentioned before, it always helps to start small, go with a particular aspect of a business or a particular function, and approach a top management user who is amiable, who has the foresight to see the success of this product, and approach him and demonstrate success. And I'm sure that once that is what has happened at Pidilite. Once we have just piloted it for one of our divisions, and now there is a demand from other divisions, because it really helps them to take business decisions faster. And yes, you need to start at the top before moving down to an operational level. Now, that also is very important, and this is what I said before, is the drill down capabilities. Because when a top management decision maker, he starts using the dashboard, very soon, once he's comfortable with it, he starts asking questions and he demands answers. And if everyone is not on the same page, the answers he gets, would be very varied and not up to his expectations. So while I mentioned that, yes, you should start with the top management users, but once they are comfortable, the dashboard should have the capability to expand very rapidly and, roll it out across all operational users. And in fact, I would say that anyone, whatever level of hierarchy is in, who is taking a decision on any aspect of business would ultimately need a dashboard. So a longer-term vision which one should have in terms of the product capabilities and a roadmap is that this would be rolled out in different levels across the organization. So very important, when we start a dashboard project, these are the obvious questions. Who are my target audience? Whether it is the entire organization or whether it's a particular division. Long-term plan should be kept here in mind. And what are the KPIs the performance metrics which I would be reflecting through the dashboards. And most important is, the presentation layout. Because while you would very quickly come to a conclusion on your target audience and the KPIs, but how you're going to present them, this is where the creative element comes into play. That's where you need an experienced campaigner here who would be able to articulate and display that this is how this KPI should be reflected by this graphical interface. Because at the end of the day, the output of a dashboard is visual. And unless it is interpreted at first go, like while you're driving a car, you look at the speedometer, you immediately come to know at what speed it is driving. You look at the temperature gauge, you come to know, how hot the engine is. Similarly, if at the first go, a dashboard doesn't reflect, what a particular performance metric is, at what level it is performing, and it's not met its objective. So how did we go about Pidilite? In fact, I would just be repeating what I just spoke now. This is where I approached one of the divisions, the head of the division, and I had a long chat with him. I engaged with him. I tried to understand, how he takes decision. There are periodic reviews with the MD. What are the things he needs to put in place before the review? What are the key things he monitors in a business performance on a quarterly basis, on a weekly basis, on a daily basis, on a yearly basis? So it's very important to engage with the business user. This is what I did with and the division where we piloted. And you engage with him, convince him on how a dashboard will be useful to him, would be much more useful than what he's currently doing, how he would take more effective decisions, how he would spend lesser time on the process of taking a decision, and spend more time on taking the decision, quality decision itself. So this is something which I did, and I sat with him, tried to list down in his businesses all the KPIs which are very important for him to monitor and manage. Okay, these things are very important. When we talk for KPIs, there are two aspects of a KPIs. One is you monitor KPIs, you manage some of the KPIs. Like for example, when you could share questions, please. I've got a chat which says, I got to remind you for asking questions. So please do that. And one should bear in mind that when we selected about 60 KPIs for this particular division, and among the 60 KPIs, we selected about 20 KPIs which we would pilot. And I'm pleased to say that 20 KPIs is 25 KPIs are being piloted now, and it's being received with great enthusiasm among the divisions, such that now it has reached the MD's ears. Now he's asking for a demonstration, and other divisions would start saving for it. So the key point here is to engage with someone who will participate with you, educate him, understand how he takes decision, and explore with him how a dashboard can be used, come to a conclusion on the performance metric, and build dashboard along those performance metrics. As I mentioned below, a single most important aspect of a dashboard building is the metrics. And these are the 4 pillars on which a metric has to rest on. First and foremost, I have said this enough times previously, that the metric has to be actionable. It needs to clearly be definitive, and it should be objective. For example, you could have a metric which will reflect a dashboard which will reflect your inventory value in days of sale. And you could have a certain norm, and a dashboard will indicate whether it's going below the norm or above the norm in a particular region, particular cluster, which is clearly actionable. But if you have a dashboard which indicates a perception of customer satisfaction, that's a very subjective thing. So one should be wary of building this subjective elements in a dashboard. When one builds a dashboard, it should be transaction oriented, something which can be taken action on. And also very important is the meaning of the metric should have a common understanding. Let's say, for example, when you take a simple figure like sales, what is the sales? Like for example, do you take institutional sales as your total sales? Or when you take profitability, do you take the gross margin? Do you take the net margin? So meaning of this, metrics is very important. So when you take a particular performance metric, it's very important to go back to different sets of users and align them and get an understanding of what is the common understanding across the organization of a particular metric. And different businesses will have different interpretation of the same metric. So it doesn't make sense to have a dashboard reflecting a metric and the understanding is very different. So that would amount to failure. Also, the metric should be very simply calculated. And it should not be saddled by complex calculation, which is very difficult to rectify. This is very important, especially during the early days. When a dashboard reflects a particular metric, the top management will invariably go back to the data and try to vet it and try to rectify it. So, one should have a dashboard or a performance metric which is very easily calculatable. And most important, dashboard should be saddled with credible data, which has a source which people can trust, and it should not be from trying to get from sources which is very ambiguous or vague. So I'm just this is a sample. It's not necessarily the standard, but a sample which we used to try to understand the type of reports which a top management for that division which we just piloted uses to take decisions. So we had a consolidated list of reports, and what is the metric which he is going to measure with the help of this report. As I mentioned, this is a format which we used for Pidilite. Different organizations, different businesses can have different formats. But what's important here is to have a structured method of knowing how we take decisions and which are the information sources and reports which he uses to take decisions. So this is a format we had, and based on this, we designed the dashboard. So once you have advanced to a certain stage of the dashboard, what's also important is to come to a conclusion as to what type of dashboard you want to build on. There are, as the slide shows, there are more than, there are about a dozen types of, dashboard which you are going to build on. It's very important to come to a conclusion as to what are you targeting. For example, let's say, as you go through each one of them, let's say you're having a dashboard which is very broad. You have a dashboard which says, in one screen indicates different aspects of performance, whether it is financial, whether it is sales, whether it is production, whether it is quality. Now, do we want to do that, or is there a burning issue in the organization and you want to tackle one aspect of the business? For example, if receivables is an issue, we want a dashboard, which will clearly reflect, how that aspect of business is performing. So one should be very clear as to how we define a dashboard. Why this is important is when we come to a dashboard designing and building the dashboard, the type of data, the design, the architecture on the type of data, the sources of data becomes very crucial. So it's very important to define, what type of dashboard are we building. Whether it is strategic, for example, do we have a long-term goal on, what we want to achieve, and do we want to monitor, how that is progressing. Now, when we have such a dashboard, the getting real-time data would not be very important. Now, you would want to monitor on a weekly basis how you are going to achieve that goal. But when you want operational, when you want to monitor, for example, production inefficiency, you will have to do that on a real-time basis, on a shift basis. So, the dashboard design for that would be very different. Again comes the time horizon, whether you want something which is very real-time, whether you want historical trends. For example, let's say you want to monitor the sales growth in a particular cluster or a particular territory. So what has been the growth compared to last year? What's the trend? You want to do that? Or, you based on historical data, you want a dashboard which will predict using some predictive logic. This is how your, future sales could be. Another aspect is customization. And, whether you have one dashboard which suits all user, or you let the user base, this is typically useful when you build in what-if scenarios, where, you would like the user to play around with. This is a very advanced type of a dashboard, which I would say, should not be built earlier on. But once the organization gets the hang of dashboards, then you could have various what-if scenarios where the, let's say, the purchase manager, would, let's say that, I want to increase my purchasing cost. What's the impact on my profitability? So these type of things are very customizable, which could be an advanced type of dashboard. And again, the level of detail, as I mentioned, when we designed the initial pilot, where to get the top management, get a hang of it, get a feel of it, it would be high level up to a certain level. But, when you start asking questions, you should have facility to drill down to the last SKU or to the last territory level. and and the point of view, which is where the dashboard exactly tells this is what you've got to do, where I mentioned that it will be actionable. And second is where it gives him some leads, and he's allowed to take his own decision based on that. So basically what this slide tells is that one should be clear as to what is the type of dashboard which we want to build in. Why this is important? Because this plays a crucial role in the design aspect. Now, I'll just come to some of the things which can go wrong in a dashboard. Just give me a couple of seconds. And I must say that, while I'm saying these are the things which could go wrong in a dashboard, these things have not happened yet at Pidilite. So we are into a fairly successful journey as of now. Most important is, communication. When you target a particular division or a particular function for a dashboard, now the message doesn't come out very clearly, how he's taking decisions and the tools he employs to take decisions. And if that doesn't come clearly, you build a dashboard which is of no use. That's why I keep repeating here, engaging with the business user, the top management is very, very crucial in building a successful dashboard. And second most important thing is when you have a dashboard, it's very important that when the use catches on, it should be widespread. You would, even the operational users should be start using it. And if that doesn't happen, then we'll have a situation where everyone is not on the same page. And when the top management asks a question, he would not get a response which he is looking at. Yeah, I think we have, discussed this. Why a dashboard can fail is one is where there is a habitual dependence on reports, on numerical reports, where, which comes from your data warehouse or transaction system, and the inertia to change is too high. That again depends on, how well you engage and tell them that, this is how you have been taking decisions and this is how you will take henceforth. And, a dashboard implementation doesn't come cheap. It calls for some investment and, you need a top management sponsor. Unless this is done, it would be looked upon as any other transaction system. And as with any other system, if it is not designed correctly, it will not deliver. And, these things are quite obvious. If you use the wrong software, you have garbage in, you'll have garbage out. And as with any project, not necessarily an IT project or dashboard project, if you exceed the budget, it would be looked upon with jaundiced eyes. So some of the steps which these are the learnings which we had, from the Pidilite is to create dashboards which are very simple to interpret. It should not be very complex. And as I mentioned, any layman should come to know at the first glance what you're trying to convey. And second is to track KPIs which truly make sense. It should not be KPIs which are relevant, KPIs which are very important to the business, and they should come in when you engage with the business decision maker. What are the performance metrics which are important to him? For example, in a service industry, customer service levels will be very important. In a manufacturing industry, your inventory would be very important. So, it should be specific to a business operation, what KPIs you're going to measure. And most important, all the graphs which you convey should be actionable. It should lead him to take some action. It should not be an information like any other report. Typically, when you have a report, if you have about 20 columns, 19 columns would be just there, and there will be one column which will make sense. Unlike here, a dashboard, it's the culmination of so many transactional data. It's very important that it should lead him to taking action. And as with any other system, without the executive management support, this just cannot be a success. I think we have gone through this. I will just repeating. Yeah. When we built our dashboard, we were looking at various solutions, and we selected Maya because one of the aspects of the solution is that it could be deployed very quickly, and they had a sound understanding of the process which requires to make dashboard available to the top management. And I must say that the whole process from starting the project to building about 25 KPIs for a particular business took us about 3 months. And today we are just about to start the training process where people will be using it. And I'm 200% sure that this will be a very successful implementation. I have Sanjay Mehta here, who is the CEO of Maya, and he will take any questions you have on that. These are just some examples of the dashboard. For example, one of the unique things which I have noticed in Pidilite is, they hardly monitor growth. They have a system of always monitoring exceptions. And, it's a very unique organization where there are no targets. And because the MD feels that if you have a target, you are limiting, and he only monitors, those aspects of business where there's an exception. So, all the dashboards, the KPIs are all geared up to highlight exceptions. Now, for example, this is a graphical tool which tells you your sales exception, and, it has drill down features. You could, it could go into cluster level, it could go into territory level. Let's say if a particular region is showing in the red, and, the region could have many clusters, and you want to know how many of those clusters are in the red, you could easily drill down and go into a particular cluster. Similarly, you have a dashboard for monitoring the performance of the, sales personnel, the productivity of the sales personnel, how many are above, how many are below, and, you have, and it's not only productivity, how well he has sold the product, the range of products, and basically whether he has performed to the role as is expected from him. So these are dashboards which gives in an instant, how well the salesman has performed, how well the sales territory has performed. And there are, 25 such, dashboards which we have developed for Pidilite. Quite obviously, I think these are self-explanatory. You would, a dashboard when successfully implemented would drastically reduce the time it takes to arrive at decisions. Not only reduces the time, but the quality of decisions will dramatically improve. And the time to action from your decision would be very swift. Yeah, that's about it. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. And we have a few questions which I would request you to answer. And I'm reading these questions in no particular order. There's a question from somebody who's been listening to us. What should be the typical amount of data that we present in a dashboard, considering 15 to 20 minutes of executive management time? So here they are talking about that the executive management will have limited time. So should the dashboard be very focused and give him the adequate data, or should we make it big and leave it for him to make the selection?
Well, quite frankly, my immediate response is to keep it very focused, at least during the initial stage, because it's a learning process. As I mentioned before, when you present a dashboard, it is something which should be easily actionable. So the amount of data you present in a dashboard, and you could have multiple dashboards for different aspects of business, but I would say it should be very limited and tackle a particular KPI. It's very easy to combine multiple KPIs into one dashboard, but if they are out of context, then at the end of the day, it would not make any sense. Like for example, if you're tackling a KPI of your inventory, then you should be focused only on that. But the granularity of data is something which you should take a call, whether it should be at a national level or let's say at a stockist level. That is something which you should need to provide. When you want to provide drill down.
This is Sanjay Mehta. At Pidilite, what we have done across is we are not looking at large chunk of data, but only focusing on exceptions. So those are all exceptions which are going into negative, where we are not performing across. Those exceptions are only highlighted. So the idea here is not going into so much data that we are constantly doing analysis, but we have to look into the action part of it with those exceptions and alerts.
So Sanjay, would it be right to say that they are kind of alerts for the management, which alerts them wherever the exception is happening so that they can look into it?
Absolutely. And exceptions are happening in both the sides. Even on the positive sides, if the sale is increasing substantially in a particular, what has made it happen? So exceptions can go into both the angles. It's not just about, warnings, but warnings can be in both the lines where how the things are performed.
See, today it's not that they are not monitoring exceptions. They are monitoring the same exceptions, but they have to wade through a myriad reports, to get to the same level of decision making. Now the same thing on a dashboard conveys in an instance, where the exceptions are and how are they performed.
There is a very interesting question, sir, which talks about how do you initiate a conversation with business leadership if they're not familiar with the concept of dashboard? So one answer which I could say was to ask them to attend Mr. Mani's session, but the other part I'll let Mr. Mani and Sanjay answer.
Well, quite frankly, as I mentioned sometime in my presentation, there is no textbook which tells you this is the SOP you should follow. It all depends on the relationship with the CIO has with the business decision maker. And if that relationship is not there, it is next to impossible to develop a dashboard. Because at the end of the day, before you start developing a dashboard, it's very important to engage in a semi-casual or semi-formal type of a discussion on how we take decision, what are his pain points, is there a process where we can improve the decision making. So this has to come through a semi-formal sort of a discussion, and you can only do that when you have established relationships with the decision makers. And this is precisely what I did, just to go down to nitty-gritty. So I usually have lunch with him. So I over a lunch conversation is where the genesis of all this started, and so that's where we started. We had extended discussions. We went through all the reports which he uses to get to a decision making. That's parallelly Sanjay Mehta was also approaching us that he has a product which helps us to build dashboard. So we put two and two together, and it took its natural course. But as I mentioned, there is no textbook way. You've got to engage with the top management user, and that's the biggest starting point. I would say. Sanjay, if you want to add.
Another aspect is in terms of the productivity part of it. People are working and building across so many reports for every review meeting. Can it be scheduled and automated in a dashboard format in the review meeting all the time so that people need not prepare those reports? So the advantage what it creates across to the management or the board is the amount of time what it saves across and the kind of communication improvement what it brings across. If those points are rightly placed across management, they would be very quick to see the ROI on the same.
See, one thing which one must strictly avoid, and this is my view as such, is to push it down their throat. Right? It's very easy to have a word with the MD and have the MD call all the business decision makers and tell them, you got to use this. If that happens, this is a very qualitative type of an output. It's a very subjective feel, of the output. They can always come back and say, this is not what we wanted. So the important aspect here is to engage with the top management and make him participate as the part of the dashboard design and development.
This is a very interesting aspect of the entire implementation and the success of a dashboard, sir. And you dwell for quite a few minutes on what are the things which makes a dashboard successful and what makes it fail. So since we are on this topic, it would be very nice to hear from you. How do you manage that kind of a change management? Because people are used to a particular way in which they look at the data, in a particular way they interpret the data, and they also feel enabled and powerful because they are the owners of that data and they are the only people who has it for the organization. And the moment I reduce it to a dashboard which is automated, as Sanjay said, does the dynamic within the organization change, and is there a reluctance to accept it?
I think it again boils down to the conversation you have with the top management, because no top management business decision maker would like to be told that he's been taking decisions all this while in the most inefficient way. So, that's very important, to bear in mind. And what we are trying to do and what we have to convey to them is that we are not trying to change the way he takes we are not trying to change the type of decisions he takes. We're only trying to drastically improve the quality and, the time he takes to arrive at that particular decision. At the first go, this is very important. That's when he understands that, you're not, charting into his territory. You're just helping him to improve his efficiency and the quality and the time of, decision.
Thank you. There is another question which talks about the role of the various CXOs, and he is talking of CFO. What role did the CFO's office play in your dashboard project? Did this bring IT closer to the CFO office?
If it is particular to the CFO, as I mentioned, this was, we have piloted this to one of the business heads because that's where business operation decision gets taken. And, as I mentioned, I engaged with one of the business heads, had long conversations with him. And so at this stage, as such, the CFO is not yet involved. But eventually, when it catches on, there will be a lot of performance metrics that the CFO is responsible for. And definitely, eventually, it will be rolled up. So what we targeted is, it's very important to pilot at a particular aspect of business operation or a particular division, which you feel would be very easy to adapt and adopt.
So, prior to this dashboard project, which was happening for the sales division, we had an earlier engagement with the finance team, the CFO team for financial consolidation, in which we had initially done across a working capital dashboard for the same at Pidilite, where they do across balance sheet consolidation of multiple subsidiaries and companies where they use our software. So that's where we had engaged with the CFO team. This project was specifically to the sales business side, the sales side.
Good. There is a question which is related to what we talked about a little earlier, is that how much of data on a dashboard is too much? Maybe Sanjay can answer it.
Yeah. So how much of data, it's purely going to be whether this dashboard, you want to use it as an exploratory action, or you want to do a point of perspective where you want to take an action on it. So it should not produce, the functionality of a dashboard is to produce action and not just analysis. So you need to make a balanced approach in terms of how much data is really meaningful for your CXO, and based on which he can take some action. So that's the key crux of it.
Sanjay, if we understand correctly, you are talking, you're not saying that you should limit the data within the system, because you would probably require all the data, and we have talked about drilling down in the presentation. It is the presentation layer which you're talking about, where we should restrict the data to what is actionable and needed, so that we give an extremely focused visual dashboard to our CXOs.
I'll just explain here, just to add to what Sanjay is saying. At the end of the day, a dashboard should reflect some KPI, performance metrics. And when we reflect KPIs in a dashboard, they should relate to each other. They should be in contextual understanding with each other. For example, if you have a dashboard which says inventory in terms of inventory in terms of number of days of your sales, and then you have a dashboard which says alongside it, which is accounts receivable. You just can't relate the two. But if you have a dashboard which reflects the KPI on inventory, and also have a dashboard which reflects the slow-moving items, for example, then you could relate the two. So it's very important. More than I would respond to this question in a way that when you have a dashboard, you should relate the data which one could relate to.
And another aspect is, let's say, for example, when in a pie chart, if I'm going to show, let's say, 20,000 pie, it doesn't make sense to look at it. I mean, it has to be a selective pie chart with not more than 20 or 30 pie slices which you can look at it. So everything has an aesthetic way of looking at it and interpreting. Even the business user is not going to look at, multiple, thousands of slices, on those lines. So we need to be very discreet about what to apply on what kind of visual data.
So there is one last question from the listeners. Dashboards help build one instance of truth in terms of data accuracy within the company. What has been your experience in this regard?
Yeah, I think this is the single most important output of a dashboard. That that's why this relates to the aspect of data hygiene. When you build a dashboard and when it reflects a certain aspect of business performance, and if that is not saddled with clean data, clean transaction data and clean master data, then you could have different interpretation based on the sources of data. So a parallel activity, and one must not make a dashboard live unless one is convinced that the data which feeds into the dashboard is kept clean, is verified, and there's a common understanding how the data is going to be interpreted.
Thank you, sir. Thanks a lot for clarifying and answering all these questions.
My pleasure.
And thanks a lot, Sanjay, for
Thank you very much.
sparing your very, very important time for this very important session. And I also would like to thank my entire logistics team for making it possible for all of you on the cyberspace to listen to us. And a very good afternoon to all of you, and thanks.
So from a logistics perspective, we will be archiving this on a web URL, and all of you will receive a link to the web archives. I would like to again thank the speakers this afternoon, and also our moderator for this evening. If you have any questions that we have not answered, you can always drop an email to us. Our next session, as I announced earlier, beginning of the program, is on Tuesday, 26th of July at 3 p.m., where our featured speaker is WNS CFO, Mr. Alok Mishra. So I would request you to block your calendar, and we'll send an invite to you as soon as possible, maybe in the next week's time. And we look forward to having your participation in the next month's webcast as well. Thank you for your time, and on behalf of Microsoft, I wish you all the best and a great day ahead. Thank you.